So good morning, everyone. I'm very proud to open this conference. This is probably the first, or we like to think about it as the first big data and AI conference dedicated only to healthcare. We hope that this would be a tradition and we would return back in the next few years with more content. And of course, as we see this new revolution starting to kick in, this would become a much, much bigger form as we all, I think everybody sitting in this room understands that, that big data is going to transform healthcare. And I don't need to give you that pitch. We'll talk a little bit about that, or a lot about that today in the different venues. So my name is Dr. Eyal Zimlichman. I'm the Deputy Director, Chief Medical Officer, and Chief Innovation Officer at Sheba Medical Center. We've partnered with ETEX, which is the company that is organizing today to bring you this conference, and with other partners as well that have come in to play a role in this important day. Briefly to go over the contents of today before we get the speakers up. So we're going to start with an opening. We're going to have two panels this morning, one before the coffee break and one after the coffee break. We're going to have a keynote presentation by Professor John Alamka, who's, I think his name and reputation precedes him, and I think everybody in this room knows John. I'll of course introduce him when he comes up. We'll have the first panel will be about overcoming challenges in implementation, and I think everybody in this room also appreciates the challenges, and so we understand why this is a critical element. We'll go to a coffee break, which we'll try to keep on time, of course, and we'll come back for a second panel on the industry perspective of future directions of artificial intelligence. We'll then move on to lunch, and after lunch and networking, which I'll come back to in a second. We're split up into three sessions, which will run in separate rooms. One on the future directions for healthcare in AI. The second is on hands-on, which we try to appeal to different populations here. Part of that is understanding how do we actually do this, right? So hands-on, we'll be talking more of the lingo of making this happen. We have a very exciting group of presenters there. And on track 3, fostering innovations in big data, which is again looking into some of the uses of big data and how do we bring that to happen. We'll come back after that for the last session, which will be another keynote by Professor Joel Dudley from Mount Sinai. And then we'll wrap up. It is a pretty long day. I urge all of you to stay until the end. I know that after lunch we start losing people, but I think we've tried to save much of the exciting stuff to after lunch to make sure people stay. So hopefully we've done a good job with that. A couple of house maintenance rules here. One is, obviously we'd like you to keep your phone silent or vibrating so we don't interfere with the talks. That's of course pretty basic today. The second thing is, for the networking, we've allocated an hour and a half for lunch and networking. The idea is that you meet. I've seen that happen already this morning. And as we know, for these meetings, when we get together to use this opportunity, networking is a very important element. So if you have people you want to talk to, instead of saying, let's skip one of the talks and talk outside, we've allocated 45 minutes after lunch or an hour and a half with lunch for people to sit down and network. So that's a critical element for us. Also, we have a couple of demos running in that time. One of the demos would be MD Clone, which again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the technology. They will be running a demo every 15 minutes. So if you're coming in and you're during a demo, you want to wait a few minutes so they start again. Every 15 minutes, they'll run a new demo during the networking time. So I think with that, I'll end my brief introduction, and I'll just mention another thing is that we really have a diverse group here, both in terms of interests and professions, from clinical folks to academia, to startups, to big corporate companies, to government. So really a diverse group We're happy for that, of course, and we think much of the value will come through these interactions. And the second is a fairly diverse group of people that came from different countries, whether it's Europe, of course, the US, Canada, and even from the East. So definitely, as we're starting to, on our first steps with this conference, and we wanted to have a more international flavor in the next few years, we welcome all of these guests and, of course, the speakers that have agreed to come and talk with us. So I want to invite my co-chairman, and it's been my pleasure working with David, Professor David Reich from Mount Sinai, New York, the president of the Mount Sinai Hospital, a big advocate for digital health and big data and AI specifically. And when we met, I was so glad to hear that a hospital president with his type of responsibilities and roles is so passionate about big data and AI and knows so much about that and really the potential and where this needs to go in the future. So he was the first choice as a co-chairman, and we're very happy that he accepted and he's here with us. So David, please, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. And I have to really speak about the true organizers of this conference, Eyal Zimlichman, and all of our colleagues from Sheba, and also the people at iText that really made this come to pass. Our big responsibility in New York was to calculate 7 hours behind so that we made the conference calls on time. But as always, with the local organizer, they did the hard work. And if I could ask also, there's really, I think you should have great pride as a nation in having Sheba Medical Center named as one of the top 10 medical centers in the world. Really a remarkable thing. So why Mount Sinai? Well, Mount Sinai's ties to the land of Israel go back about 3,000 years or so. And so we have a very, many people at Mount Sinai, because of our Jewish philanthropic background as an institution, have strong ties to the nation. But also we found ties, actually I think it started in one of the parking lots of Sheba about 3 years ago, in having very good and warm relationships, not just with Eyal Zimlichman, but also with Professor Kreis, the CEO of the organization, and it's been a great pleasure to work with them, and we've found that we have a common language and a common approach in that we believe, as sort of unregenerate computer nerds, that there is a way for technology to really be our platform for the future. And having so many of you here in this room, we know that we share that vision. And one of the things that's important, I know for many people in this room, is that at some point access to healthcare markets outside of this relatively small nation is something that will be important for the success of the many startups that are represented here, and the truly innovative nature of the Israeli tech industry as it applies to healthcare is something that we all really look forward to fostering and growing. And hopefully by the talk that I'll give later and the representation from others from Mount Sinai is that we will perhaps give you an idea of how we think in the American healthcare system, what our problems are, and also how you can adapt your solutions to the problems we have, because sometimes things don't get so much lost in translation, but we have to be sure that you understand what will create not just the good case for making healthcare better, but also, frankly, a business case, because there has to be a return on investment and a true argument where we can decide with our limited healthcare dollars in the US how we would invest in such technologies. And I hope that will be another outcome of our work today. So there is no doubt that this collaboration between Mount Sinai and Sheba, which you see here today, is something which is going to go on and continue. But let's make no mistake here, Sheba did all of the hard work today, so we want to give them proper credit. And we hope that all of the energy we have from the participants from the US and the energy from the participants from Israel will continue that long relationship and the growth and frankly the affection that we have as groups in two nations that feel very strongly that we share a common mission. So now I'm going to invite Eyal back to the podium to introduce Professor Kreis. Thank you.